Hey, what's up? Anthony here. I'm a fantasy author. If you don't know me, I wrote this book, Moonthread. But you're probably relieved to know I'm not here to talk about Moonthread today. I'm here to talk about a much better book called Who Fears Death. I'm going to spoil all of this book for you. If you're not into that, you might want to click off. For me, there are no spoilers, only prophecies, but I know that I'm very much in the minority, so I'm to set up the excerpt that I'm going to read, I'm basically going to spoil the entire plot of this book. And I'm also going to read the very, 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 very last chapter, right before the acknowledgments, called Chapter 1. There's a girl named Onyesonbu. Her name means Who Fears Death. It's a heavy book. This character, I'm just going to start spoiling it now. Okay, cool. So the book begins, and it's this girl waking up to her power. She realizes that she is a sorceress and she is a shapeshifter. She is basically somebody with god-level abilities, and to wake up the fullness of her power, she has to live her own death in real time. And if you've read Moonthread, you're already starting to see where some of my inspirations are coming from. Because this is the book that I read this book and I said that I want a piece of that. That is awesome. There are just so many moments in this book where I felt like I've never felt this before. I've never felt this immersed in a story. So she has to live her own death. And so early on in the book, we're with her and we see from her perspective, she gets stoned to death by an angry mob, and she lets herself get stoned to death. So we know that, okay, that's important information for the excerpt that I'm going to read. The book happens. She confronts her father. There's this epic shapeshifter duel late in the book. I want to say like in one of the last 4 or 5 chapters, and it's intense. I'll probably read a portion of it sometime next week or something. And then the end happens, and there's a chapter where she lets herself get stoned to death. And then there's an epilogue from somebody else's perspective. And then, that's the peacock symbol, okay? This is the last chapter. Chapter 1, rewritten. This is where I learned what you can do with fantasy. Chapter 1, rewritten. Let them come then, Onyesonwu said, looking down at the symbol she'd scratched in the sand. The proud peacock. The symbol was complaint, argument, insistence. She looked down at herself and nervously rubbed her thighs. They'd put her in a long, coarse white dress. It felt like another prison. They'd chopped off her hair. They'd had the nerve to chop off her hair. She stared at her hands. The circles, swirls, and lines were woven into complex designs snaking up her wrists. She leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes in the sunshine. The world became red. They were coming. Any moment now, she knew. She'd seen it. Years ago. She'd seen it. Someone grabbed her with such roughness that she grunted. Her eyes flew open, bitter rage flooding her body and spirit. Bright red in the hot sunshine. She'd cured everything, yet in doing so her friends had died her Muita. Oh, our beloved Muita, her life, her death. The fury filled her. She could hear her daughter raging too. Her daughter had the roar of a lion. 6 thick-armed young men crowded her cell to take her. 3 of them had machetes. Maybe the other 3 were so arrogant that they didn't think they'd need weapons to handle her. Maybe they all thought the evil sorceress named Onyesonwu was resigned to her fate. She could understand why they'd made this mistake. She understood well. Nevertheless, what could any of them do as a strange force shoved them all back? 3 of them fell out of the cell. They all sat, lay, and stood watching, slack-jawed and horrified, as Onyesonwu threw off her awful dress and changed. She shifted, sprouted, enveloped, stretched, and grew her body. Onyesonwu was expert. She was Eshu. She became a Kopanyongo, a fire spitter. Vroom! She blasted out a ball of flame so intense that the sound around her melted to glass. The 3 remaining men in her cell were painfully scorched raw, as if they'd been lying in the desert sun for days, waiting to die. Then she blew into the sky like a shooting star, ready to return home. No. She was not a sacrifice to be made for the good of men and women, Okeke and Nuru alike. She was Onyesonwu. She had rewritten the great book. All was done. And she could never, ever let her baby, the one part of Muita that still lived, die. Ufananya. He'd spoken those ancient, mystical words to her. Words that were truer and purer than love. What they shared was enough to shift fate. She thought of the palm wine drunkard in the great book. All he lived for was to drink his sweet, frothy palm wine. When one day his expert palm wine tapper fell from a tree and died, he was distraught. But then he realized if his tapper was dead and gone, then he must be somewhere else. And so the drunkard's quest began. Onyesonwu considered this as she thought about her Muita. Suddenly, she knew where she would find him. He would be in a place that was so full of life that death would flee it for a while. The green place her mother had shown her, beyond the desert, where the land was blanketed with leafy trees, bushes, plants, and the creatures that lived in them. He would be waiting at the Iroko tree. She almost screamed with joy as she flew faster. Can Kopanyongo shed real tears? But what if Binta and Liu, she wondered, with a flicker of hope, would they be there too? Ah. But fate was cold and brittle. The 3 of us, Sola, Aro, and Najiba, smiled. We, mentor, teacher, and mother, saw it all in the way that sorcerers, experienced and in training, often see things deeply connected to them. We wonder if we will ever see her again. What will she become? When she and Muita unite, and they will, what will become of their daughter who laughed so gleefully inside Onyesonwu's belly on the way to the green place? If Onyesonwu had taken one last look below to the south, with her keen Kupanyongo eyes, she'd have seen Nuru, Okeke, and 2 Iwu children in school uniforms playing in a schoolyard. To the east, stretching into the distance, she'd have seen black paved roads populated by men and women, Okeke and Nuru, riding scooters and carts pulled by camels. In town Durfa, she'd have spotted a flying woman discreetly meeting up with a flying man on the roof of the tallest building. But the wave of change was yet to sweep by, directly below. There, thousands of Nuru still waited for Onyesonwu, all of them screaming, yelling, shouting, laughing, glaring, waiting to wet their tongues with Onyesonwu's blood. Let them wait. They will be waiting for a long, long time.